Hey everyone, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel, and today's video is just going to be some basic explanations behind the importance of any person being able to keep normal blood pressures. Diabetes wise, it's also important because it can help keep our blood vessels in as healthy a shape as possible, along with keeping normal blood sugars to prevent scarring and damage and nerve damage and blood vessel damage. So anyways, I'll talk a little bit about blood pressure, and then I'm going to transition into talking about what I learned from my eye doctor, something that can really help prevent or slow the progression of diabetic retinopathy, which can happen over a long period of time of having type 1 diabetes, and especially when blood glucose levels have been not under control for a long period of time, meaning high A1Cs, high blood sugars, constantly being high. You get the picture. So anyways, blood pressure basically is the force in your blood vessels. Basically, it's pretty basic. It's kind of the force of your blood as it goes through your veins and your arteries, and how your body is pushing all the blood and the nutrients through. Now, there's a certain force that is applicable and is healthy, and then there's a certain force that is too little of a force and way too high of a force, aka hypertension, meaning high blood pressure, and hypotension, meaning low blood pressure. Now, blood pressure is measured in millimeters of mercury, which is mmHg. Millimeters is the mm part, and Hg is mercury's acronym or symbol on the periodic table of elements. That is what is used, and a typical normal blood pressure is anything less than 120 over 80 millimeters of mercury. So anything higher than that is considered high blood pressure. Anything lower than that is considered, normal. And then when you get down to like 90 over 60, you're starting to get into the really low blood pressure stages. So now a lot of people can function at different blood pressure levels, and your blood pressure is going to vary throughout the day. If you get scared, anxious, nervous, your blood pressure will probably be increased. In the morning, your blood pressure will be higher than it is throughout the rest of the day because your body pumps hormones, the dawn phenomenon, to kind of get everything going, to get you up out of bed. So if you were to first wake up in the morning and get out of bed and you had like a blood pressure cuff and you took your blood pressure, I almost guarantee you it would be on the higher side because your body is trying to wake up, get energized for the day, get the metabolism going, and all those different things. So as you guys know, most of you probably do understand that there are two numbers that come with blood pressure. You have your top number, which is your systolic reading, and your bottom number is your diastolic reading. And your systolic reading is basically the number when your heart is contracting, how much force is being applied into that blood vessels. The bottom number, being your diastolic, is what is going on with your blood pressure, or the force inside your veins and your arteries and your blood vessels when your heart is at rest or when your heart is in between beats. Now, the systolic pressure, that top number, that's going to be typically higher, and it should be higher in most cases, can fluctuate more than the diastolic, meaning that you could have a very normal diastolic, but you could be nervous for a doctor appointment, and that number could be like at 150 or something like that, or you get scared, or you get nervous, or heaven forbid you take a blood pressure in the morning. It could be higher, but you might have a normal diastolic. So it depends on the person. Again, it depends on how your body functions, but the main one that you need to be worried about, you have to be worried about both. But if your resting blood pressure, meaning that bottom number, is really higher than 80, that's not really ideal, because that means your heart is working extra hard when it's at rest, and your heart should not be working hard when it's at rest. Typically, if you get me in a good state, I'm not anxious, I'm not nervous, my diastolic is actually usually in the 60s. I get like 60, 65, 70, which is really, really good because then you're under that 80 mark. But I have had my diastolic as high as about 85 or 90 when I was in the hospital diagnosed in diabetic ketoacidosis. Now, keep in mind, my blood pressure was extremely high at diagnosis because my body was exerting so much force to push the blood through my blood vessels with a ton of sugar in it. So it was basically like pushing really thick maple syrup through my veins, which again can increase blood pressure. So that is why I believe blood pressure and blood sugar are highly related, because if there's a ton of sugar present in your blood, it's almost so thick that it's scarring and pushing all that force on your blood vessels, and your blood vessels can only take so much pressure before they go and they just can't handle it, or all of a sudden you have all this damage, you have all this scar tissue, and then comes the neuropathy, in comes the retinopathy, in comes heart attack, stroke, you name it, cholesterol buildup that could cause whatever. So it's important to keep a normal blood pressure, and I believe you can maintain a normal blood pressure through A, maintaining normal blood sugars as a diabetic, but also B, trying to eliminate your stress, and stuff like that. But if you do have a family history of hypertension or hypotension that is often genetically passed through families, I do have my father who is hypertensive, who is being medicated for it right now, at this time. But there's always that possibility that as I go along in my future that I may have to be medicated for hypertension. But I wouldn't be really worried about your blood pressure unless you're getting like 140/90 consistently all the time, even when you're calm or at rest or not exercising or whatever. Then that's an indicator that your blood pressure is consistently high and that you need to get treated for it. The times that I've had my blood pressure high, it has not been consistent. I would say most of the time I'm in that normal to what you would call pre-hypertensive stage, in which most diabetic doctors or endocrinologists will set a goal for us to be less than 130/80. So as long as we're like at that pre-hypertensive stage or less, we're considered fine. And I even think that's pretty applicable for all people, even though the standard is 120/80. Doctors, I swear, have been arguing over what is an appropriate blood pressure. But I think that standard of 130/80 to 120/80 or less, I think is a really good rule. I've heard that you need to be less than 115/75, but I think that's honestly kind of pushing it. Because there's going to be times in your life where you're just going to might be having higher blood pressures than normal. You might be stressed out, you might have whatever. And then on the contrast, if you have hypotension, that's not good. You can cause all kinds of dizziness. You can want to pass out. My mother has been not really hypotensive, but she's always ran on the lower side, where she was always like 100/60 continuously. And they're like, "Are you okay? Do you feel okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." So it depends on the person. I think you can function at lower blood pressures, but if you get too low, that's also very dangerous. So you kind of want to stay like above 100, and lower than like 130, and you probably want to stay somewhere between 60 and 80 for your bottom number. So it really is kind of a tight range, but it is attainable. And if you have high blood pressure, there are medications to bring it down. Lisinopril is a classic example of a blood pressure reducing medication. They also can give water pills to help push excess sodium out, which can keep your blood pressure lower. So that's where the diet kind of comes in too. Don't consume tons of sodium, because it retains all your body fluid, which again is hard on your blood vessels, hard on your heart to be pushing all that through. Unfortunately, with blood pressure, you're really not going to know you have a problem until you have somebody take your blood pressure. As a dental hygienist, I do have to know how to take blood pressures. This is something I learned in summer over my dental health and safety course. Any new patient I treat, any person with hypertension, any person that is pregnant, any person that's had a history of hypotension, I need to be taking, or any heart condition, I have to be taking their blood pressure. If it's somebody new that I see and they come out normal, I don't have to retake it. But people that have consistently have problems with blood pressure or have a history of having problems with blood pressure, I need to know how to interpret what this means in terms of their treatment for the day. Are they uptight or nervous about being in the dental chair? Maybe that's why their blood pressure is high, and then retake it. I have to understand kind of how that works and kind of how to interpret the different stages of hypertension. There is a stage 1 and a stage 2. I won't go into that too much. But if you want to know, stage 2 basically is anything when your blood pressure is anything greater than 160 over 100. And that's getting extremely high to where you can cause lots of damage if you're not unaware. And if you don't know, you're not going to know you have high blood pressure unless somebody takes it, which is important why you get it checked regularly at your doctor's office. And if you're consistently running higher, you need to be put on some sort of medication. Now, it needs to be consistent. Like I said, the few times I've had high or low blood pressures, they haven't been consistent enough for them to medicate. And same thing with the low blood pressures. There are medications to get your blood pressure back up to a normal range. I would say most people probably have more of the issue of having high blood pressure, especially dealing with diabetes. But my biggest tips, like I said, is to eliminate your stress and keep your blood sugars as normal as possible, because I feel like when I go in to have my blood pressure taken and I have a normal blood sugar and I'm calm, I get great blood pressures. I mean, they're like fantastic. They're always like 115/70, 120/82, 120 over 65, whatever. And if you can, make sure that you get your blood pressure manually taken, which means that they have to put the cuff around you, squeeze it up to whatever, put your stethoscope on and listen for the carotid cuff sounds. Much more accurate than the automatic blood pressure cuffs. That's why I hate having that blood pressure cuff on in the hospital, because the nurses kept telling me your blood pressure's higher. I said, why don't you just take it manually? Well, they didn't want to. Manual readings are much more accurate as long as the person doing it knows how to listen for the proper sounds, because if they don't, they could falsely take your blood pressure. But the automatic cuffs to me aren't as accurate. It's more accurate to take one manually. That is how I learned how to take a blood pressure, was listening for the sounds myself. And it's not that difficult. And once you learn how to do it, you can do it. And once you learn to understand what the different blood pressures mean and kind of what they mean in terms of like healthy or non-healthy, it really doesn't make a difference. If you do go in and you have an unexperienced person taking your blood pressure, here's my tips for you. Make sure you have them taken manually. If you're unsure, have them take it a couple times. If you run a little higher before your appointment, could be the white coat syndrome, you're just nervous, have them take your blood pressure in the middle of your appointment or after your appointment to see if you kind of went down, and then you can eliminate the fact that you don't really have hypertension, you just have nervous energy, kind of like me, and it can be a little bit on the higher side. Make sure that if they don't ask you to, uncross your legs, because that can make a big difference. Even if they're just crossed at the ankles, you need to be fully uncrossed with your feet flat on the floor, and your arm on a table about at your chest height, because if your arm is way up here or your arm is way down here, that can affect your readings. Make sure that they apply the cuff tightly. And I personally do not like to wear long sleeves when I have my blood pressure taken. Now, I've read studies where apparently it doesn't matter, but I would rather have my bare arm against it, because if they put it on wrong and they hear my sleeve rubbing against my arm, they may mistake that as an early carotid cuff sound at like a blood pressure level of 150, when actually my blood pressure may be only at like 125, and that can make a difference in how they chart. So keep that in mind, that if you're not sure if they took it right, have the doctor take it, have them retake it again, and just to re-verify, because it's your health, and if they misdiagnose you with hypertension or hypotension and you don't really have a problem, that can screw you over big time. So anyways, I think I kind of discussed enough about blood pressure and its importance, and if you have any questions for me, let me know. I listened to people's blood pressures before, so I kind of know what to expect when you look at that. I kind of know a little bit of the basics about hypertension just because I've done my research. I have a parent with hypertension and stuff like that. So now I'll move on to kind of like how I feel about my eye appointment and some interesting information that my endocrinologist, my ophthalmologist gave me. And her daughter happens to be a type 1 diabetic. So I have no eye damage, so praise God for that. I am almost a year and a half into being diabetic, and I don't have any sort of retinopathy or glaucoma or issues with my eyes. I still don't even need glasses. My vision is totally fine, totally clear, and I'm very blessed and lucky to have that. But she did go to some sort of, I think it was some sort of nutritional conference way out in Vegas that has to do with eye health and the nutrients that you consume and how it can impact your eye health. So she was saying within 20 to 30 years, any type 1 diabetic will be more likely to get retinopathy just from having the disease for such a long time and possibly being exposed to high blood sugars for a long time. So on top of really regulating your A1C and keeping it at a healthy level, she says less than 6.5%, and I agree with her. I even say less than 6. My A1C right now is like 5.9, predicted to be like at 6.1-ish at my next appointment, so I'm not really complaining considering the amount of stress I've been dealing with in college. But I've been able to maintain my pretty tight range for the most part. But on top of having that good blood sugar control, or A1C, she was saying the importance of keeping high omega-3 levels inside your bloodstream. Omega-3s are healthy fatty acids that are found in lots of different things. Most particularly, you find them in fish, like salmons. I think tuna does have some omega-3s. Any kind of fish will definitely have omega-3s. Certain vegetables will have omega-3s. But she was saying that she recommends that a lot of people with diabetes, especially type 1s, consume fish oil. I think it was like 500 milligrams or 500 milligrams or 500%. I can't remember the amount, but if I saw a bottle on the label, I could tell right away if it was the appropriate amount. just to keep your blood levels up. And apparently omega-3s are supposed to be very, very healthy for the health of your blood vessels in your eye, for all the different parts of your eyes. The obvious carrots and berries are good for your eyes too. But she was also saying that there's foods with these pigments in it that are really good for your eyes. The yellow and orange type vegetables like peppers, sweet potatoes, the dark leafy greens like spinaches, kales, lettuces are very, very good for your eye health. So on top of maintaining a good A1C, studies have shown that people that have high omega-3 blood levels through the natural foods they consume, or just by taking fish oil, and also consuming these pigment-rich type vegetables and fruits, these dark green to orangey, yellowy fruits and vegetables are often going to slow the progression or stop having a diabetic retinopathy. With also having good blood sugars, your diet is just not going to stop you from having retinopathy. But it's something that I'm willing to look into, and I'm going to do a little more research, and I think I might start consuming more omega-3, whether it be in fish oil pills or just through natural diet, just to see if that will just keep my eye health up. But eating a well-balanced diet is very important, and I thought that was really cool that she stressed to me that there's different specific foods and different things that really can help keep those omega-3 levels up and just keep your eye health in check, on top of maintaining as normal blood sugars as possible. To prevent diabetic retinopathy. And it's something that nobody wants to have, and your sight is precious for you, and retinopathy is one of those first things that will happen after a long time of having diabetes, if not well taken care of, or just having a long-term exposure to high blood sugars, or running high blood sugars for a long time. So I thought that was really cool that she kind of explained that, and I wanted to share that with you guys. And yeah, so definitely do your research. If I decide to go with like the whole fish oil thing, I definitely will let you know how I feel about that. Or if I do something like with my diet to really incorporate good eye health and nutrition, I definitely will do so. But I found that very, very interesting, and I wanted to share that with you guys on top of maintaining normal blood pressure. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. I post videos every single week about diabetes plus more. Thank you so much for 500 subscribers. I am so blessed and thankful to have each and every single one of you join my channel, and I am glad that you are learning from me and that you are enjoying the content that I produce for you. I still have to do something to celebrate 400 subscribers. One of you did suggest that I do a day in the life of a dental hygiene student, which I think I might do because I think that's really an interesting thing. I'll probably like film it on like a day I have lecture, because like when I'm in lab I can't have any like of the cameras and stuff like that out because of like privacy policy and all the different things. And I'm not going to be filming people that don't want to be filmed and stuff like that, but I definitely can show you guys like my, kind of like how I get ready, maybe my blood sugars during the day, kind of like how my day goes, what I did for the day, what I learned for the day. I definitely will be doing that. I think that'll be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for more amazing videos coming out from me. I got lots of great content coming out for you guys, and I hope you're enjoying these videos. So until next week, 4 more videos. Take care. God bless. Be kind. Spread positivity. And be thankful. Bye, everyone.